This is like the culmination of one big episode where Krishna actually cheated. Krishna tells in the Bhagavad Gita that among the among the gamblers, he's a cheat among the gamblers. Yutam chalayatam asmi. So even uh, cheating and gambling, or cheating rather as a category of activity, is not beyond the purview of Krishna. I thought that in our short discussion here, we would focus on the word heaven and what exactly is heaven. So in the Bhagavad Gita, we have Arjun telling Krishna that it is not just a question of this battlefield of Kurukshetra where I'm fighting with my cousins. My thirst is for transcendental knowledge. And who's going to give me that? I don't care even if I get a kingdom which is unrivaled, where there are no opponents. Rajyam Suranam api chadipatyam. I don't care. I just want transcendental knowledge. He doesn't say that he needs transcendental knowledge, but that is his thirst. How do we know that then it was knowledge that which was Arjuna, what was being sought by Arjun? The moment he comes to his senses that I better not argue with Krishna, I'm just wasting my time and his. And that's the point where he says, I am now ready to become a student. And in many places, in his many times in his conversations and lectures, Prabhupada said that is the beginning point of anyone's spiritual life, where you say, I am ready to become a student. So, as I said, we'll discuss a little bit about this thing called heaven. Now, this is a 1987 poll by USA Today, where 72% of people polled in America in 1987 said their chances of going to heaven are excellent. So there's a small back to God article. If 72% are going to heaven, that means all the sinning and all the raping and the murdering and the money embezzling is all done by only 28%, because the 28% are feeling that they are not going to heaven because they are sinful. So what exactly is this? When somebody does almost everything which is not allowed by scriptures, and you still feel that my chances of attaining heaven are excellent, that backward article tells that this could be just fanatical optimism, to say the least. In the Vedic scriptures, there are descriptions of realms or planets or places, if you like to call just them just places, where the level of happiness, material happiness, of course, is hundreds and thousands of times bigger than anything that we can imagine here. And naturally, one would like to go to such a place. So the fundamental point is there something wrong in that? No, there is nothing basically wrong in trying to gain something higher than what you have. So seeing Arjun so confidently saying that I don't care for this measly earthly kingdom, I don't even care even if I get the heavenly kingdom. What I want is, who am I? What is the goal of my life? What is the purpose of everything? Why everything exists? Now, these are kind of heavy duty questions. and which required a competent authority to answer them. So, a few chapters, not chapters, even a few verses later, Krishna, of all personalities, is telling Arjun that to tell you the truth, don't believe in these descriptions of heavenly planets. You may say, what? That means Krishna is lying, or Krishna or the Vedas are lying, or there is some kind of a cheating involved. Well, it all depends upon how do you see a particular thing. Right now, in Wall Street, there is something happening which some people feel it is like a joke or a funny thing, but for some it is serious. Like mostly, Wall Street is manipulated by the big billionaires with lots of money, and they can manipulate the market. Now, for the first time, the average Joe, the retail investor, they have sort of ganged up together, and they are beating the dash out of the big time manipulators. And some of them lost a lot of money. So they are crying wolf, they are crying hordes that something should be done. Now, for a outsider, or for example, many of us who are just trying to chant our rounds and make a living and somehow manage to tie all the ends together, we may not dabble into Wall Street. We don't even know how things are manipulated there. But in the words of Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, mostly it is a game of cheaters and cheated. Those who are cheaters, sometimes they are the receiving end. So it is not like party A is better than party B or B is better than A. They are both there just to make a quick buck or to cheat. So the living entity, a jiva, a soul, if the living entity is not made aware as to what is your source, where have you come from, then you might just go from one place in this material world to another place thinking, oh, this place is much better than the previous one. But do you belong here? That's the main question. Do you belong here? Mamev ansha jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha. Arjun, each and every living being is a part of me, is my loving son or daughter. I am the seed giving father, and therefore I claim every living being to be my own. So, the Mahabharata or many other Puranas, they talk in terms of Arjuna going to heaven, coming back. There are some stories of the Devas, godly beings, we call them demigods. Sometimes people don't like that, hey, why you just call Krishna your God and everybody is a demi or a semi God? Devatas means those who are brilliant beings, and they live in a place which is also very brilliant. So coming back to this point, that why is Krishna saying that don't believe in this Vedic stuff? Because as this poll, 1987 poll came to the conclusion, people are just hell bent on going to heaven. And even if something which is eternal is offered to them, they may say, nah, this is much better. Why perform devotional service when you can just give some charity? There are no rules, no regulations, and still you can become godly, spiritual, enlightened. What's the matter with that? Like while I was in the Bhakti Center, uh, I happened to read one magazine about a particular type of faith which was becoming very popular among Hollywood celebrities, among business people, even in Wall Street. And there was one interview. So one person was asked that you were born, in a so-called Christian family, you had Protestant background or whatever. What made you change and accept this particular way of spirituality? Oh, he said, oh, the biggest advantage is there is no Bible and there is no Pope. And then he was asked, could you explain? Oh, there is no one book which tells you don't do this or don't do that. And there is no one person who's like a overwhelming authority over everything. And I thought, yes. So this is what a person today is trying to escape from. Don't throw a book at me and don't tell me that this is a big brother and he's watching you. Albeit that there are so many times where people get abused by authority, they don't like a book which is not relevant. We won't go into that discussion now. But why is Krishna telling Arjuna that this all stuff is kind of made up stuff? In fact, Krishna uses the words pushpitam vacham, which means just flowery language. It's like when you, in your mobile phone, there comes a offer, how to become a millionaire in 30 days. Now, you just have to contribute $10,000 for my particular formula. You may say, well, if I had 10,000 still, I'm doubting whether something like that could happen. So this is the flowery language. Too much offered for too less. Books offering you how to increase your memory or your height or reduce your weight within 10 days, 12 days, 13 days, 40 days. The same thing is being perpetuated. Flowery language. Last point. You may say, okay, I can understand that this kind of thing will suit hucksters and cheaters in New York or Mumbai or London today. But the Vedas, come on, you say that the Vedas also cheat? It is something like this. It's a gradual process of purification. I'll give an example which is more suited to India, but Prabhupada gives it so many times. Like people brew liquor, and many times it happens so many times in India, especially in the underprivileged sections of society. They make something from very spurious chemicals or outright dangerous liquids, and as a whole you find that 13 people dead, 20 people dead. It happens in India so many times. So Prabhupada said what the government does is there is a government owned and operated liquor bar where it is said that you can have a permit to drink. At least that liquor is not dangerous. Now, I don't know what that means. Alcohol is dangerous, but this is not poisonous at least. So, if some of you have come to India, you may see something called a permit room. You may say, oh, what's a permit room? Well, the government is not encouraging you to drink, but in case you want to, you can come here. So Krishna, throughout the Puranas, whatever the Vedas are saying, he's saying, I'm not encouraging that. But since this is the Bhagavad Gita, I'm giving directly some kind of knowledge which is higher. So my advice is don't believe in that stuff. It is mostly made up. Made up from what point of view? For somebody who has lived 100 years today, that's a celebration, isn't it? When we read that in Kali Yuga, the official means what the Vedas say, official lifespan is 100 years. How many centenarians are there? Very few. 90, people say, oh, he has lived enough. Srila Prabhupada came to New York at age of 69, and the East Village Other, I think that paper stopped publication a few months ago. No, that was the Village Voice. It was the East Village Other, the other hippie newspaper, and they described Swami A.C. Bhaktivedanta as somebody who has lived 8 years or 10 years past his allotted time. Just see the language. And as many of our senior devotees, they say the overwhelming motto during the slogan during the hippie era was, don't trust anyone above 30. So it's amazing how at 70 years of age, Prabhupada could get that trust from them. So although it is 100, hardly anybody lives like that. There are very few people. Compared to 100, how about a lifespan of 5 million years? Now that is fantastic. That looks unbelievable. But there's a big but. Compared to the eternality of the soul, even 5 million years is like a flash in the pan. And that's Krishna's point. The Vedas are not wrong. Krishna is not saying that all the Vedic literatures are wrong. He's saying that from this particular point of view, even millions and millions and millions of years will still be a waste of your time. And that's why he calls it flowery language. I will end with 3 key points. With Bali Maharaj's episode, people feel that his wealth is gone. What about the post of Indra which he wanted? And what about his enemies, the Devatas? By surrendering unto the Lord, what did Bali Maharaj gain? His wealth is gone? No. He got Sutala planet, which is hundreds of times more prosperous than the heavenly kingdoms. What about the post of Indra? Lord Vishnu says, in the Savarni Manvantara, he will get that too. The post of Indra is not gone. What about the competition with the Devatas? He says, now he's under my shelter. What to speak of a demon? Even a demigod cannot harm him. So that is the glorious position of Bali Maharaj. And it is all summed up by one great Vaishnava poet, where he says, Atma Nivedanam, surrendering everything to the Lord. And the emblem of that surrender is Bali Maharaj. One of the greatest of personalities is a Mahajan. His behavior is exemplary for you and me for all of eternity to come. Granthara Srimad Bhagavat Mahapuran ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we have about 10 minutes, 12 minutes for any interaction, questions, comments, corrections.
Hi Krishna, Shamanan bro. Thank you so much, bro. I had one question.
Yes,
But we say that the Supreme Lord takes away the the opulence of devotees if it is also a form of his mercy like that. In the case of Bali Maharaj, he was not like exhibiting the symptoms of a devotee or anything. He was like conquering the devatas, and he was the leader of the demons. So how is it that, like, was he considered a devotee even before like Vaman Dev appeared, and he took away everything?
Well, the focus of the episode of Bali Maharaj is how Krishna tried to wing his way through various types of verbal dealings, where Krishna tried to talk to him that, oh, this is not dharma, this is dharma. But Krishna tested him and he passed that test. I was just reading Vishwanath Chakravarti's comments on the 32nd, the 28, 29, 30, 31, and 32, the last five verses. So Chakravarti comments that, and Prabhupada has not taken it verbatim, but Prabhupada has taken the mood of it, that your guru is supposed to be the most venerable person in your life. But when your guru comes before you and Krishna, and you decide to disregard your guru, that's considered a very high degree of renunciation. So just read what Prabhupada says in the purport. Krishna may take away a devotee's money, but that doesn't mean that person is reduced to poverty. I find this very significant. People become rich on account of punya karma, pious activity. People become poor because when they are rich, in their pride and arrogance, they commit so many sinful activities. And this is a circle which goes on endlessly. So somebody is rich today, he is poor tomorrow. Day after tomorrow again, he is rich. A devotee is losing money doesn't mean he is a poverty-stricken person. He is still very much under the shelter of Krishna. That's a significant point here.
If if anybody else has a question or a comment, please feel free to unmute yourself and share. I also had another question,
Hi,
bro. Yes.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Kamananda
Krishna.
Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams. Such a wonderful class always. Um, Similar to Gershram Prabhu's question, um, Krishna tested Bali Maharaj, but he passed the test. And many times Krishna will test us, and hopefully we will pass. But my key question is that Krishna asked for something very big, and Bali Maharaj passed the test. But not every person's soul most likely would. So therefore, for example, if Krishna came to every single person and asked for the same thing, one must have the adhikar or some sort of bhakti sukriti in order to be able to give up so much. And so what was Bali Maharaj's qualification? And Krishna knew he would pass this test, but he wouldn't give it to any random soul, such a big test. So what made Bali Maharaj qualified? What was his, I guess, past doings or qualifications that would give him the ability to pass such a test? Thank you.
Okay, very nice question. It is said that Krishna doesn't give you a stone which you cannot lift. He knows exactly the purpose behind a test. Like, we are so bugged and so angry or so disappointed with our academic tests or life's tests because many times we feel this test is geared to test my ignorance, how much I don't know. But Krishna has never tested anyone to test their ignorance. He has only tested someone to test their knowledge. So, point number one, Krishna knows the strength. He has infinite knowledge. So, we should trust him. So, sometimes we may see something before us. How am I supposed to do it? So, like, there is a very nice prayer. Oh Lord, do not lighten the burden, but give strength to my shoulders. We can pray for anything. We can pray that, Krishna, why don't you lift it yourself if you can do everything? Like in the Bauri 22nd Avenue, Prabhupada gave a class saying that Krishna didn't tell in the Bhagavad Gita that Arjuna, I will fight the war for you and you can take LSD. Professor, you can smoke ganja. He knew that most of the crowd there understood what he meant. So, just to repeat the same thing, uh, Krishna doesn't give you a test which you cannot bear. He doesn't give you a stone which you cannot lift. Our prayer has to be, rather than mellowing down the problem, we say, please give strength to my shoulders. And that Krishna gives because that's a very positive oriented prayer or a request. And Krishna gladly gives that. And the last thing about what Krishna saw in Bali Maharaj, later, while praising the qualities of Bali Maharaj, Krishna seems to, and that is where I found this that's comment which I made. And Krishna said, Vamandev is saying, I tried to dislodge him from his position of fortitude, and I tried to use various kinds of words, but I could see that he remained steadfast, and that's his glory. So Krishna saw that this person is glorious, but he went through that trial by fire and then came out successful. That's it. That's not how Krishna wanted to show Bali Maharaj's glory towards to everybody. Is it okay?
Thank you so much. That's very helpful. But just to clarify, Bali Maharaj was not a great personality in his past life. He hadn't constantly gone through these tests before. Just wanted to clarify that Krishna saw, or Vamandev saw this in Bali Maharaj now, but there must be, I guess it's not written in Shastra, that Bali Maharaj had some qualification to even get to this point, but it's not stated that he was some sort of great personality in his past life. Is that correct?
Now I understand. There may not be any backstory to something. Sometimes Krishna just presents something, and at that point, a person takes the decision. And if he goes through that trial by fire, you come out successful. So, but being part and parcel of Krishna, all of us have that potential, but only few will act. Few will have that faith. There is a verse where Shukracharya, his guru, is telling him, "Don't do that. He's Vishnu." And Bali Maharaj's retort is, "If he is Vishnu and is going to take it anyway, I would rather give it gladly, because giving charity to Brahmanas gladly is my occupational duty." Perhaps that is that spark which purchased Krishna. That, oh, normally he gives charity to everyone. Here, even if he's told that I am Vishnu, but he's using that choice. See, Hiranyakashipu was told that this is Vishnu and he's going to kill you. He says, oh, then I'm going to kill him. That also is a choice. But Bali Maharaj, when he came to know that this is Vishnu, is God, and he can take it, oh, he's going to take it, I'll gladly give it.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. You had a question, Gaurcharan Prabhu?
Like we see that Bali Maharaj was given this heavenly planet, kind of, it's like a heavenly planet, and then Vamandev himself becomes like the doorkeeper. But
yeah.
But if it sounds like, is it just sake of saying it is said? Because if he is such a high level devotee, like accepting service from the Lord would not be like a kind of a right thing. So what is that understanding of being a doorkeeper?
See, Krishna is no mean-spirited person. He's not somebody who's like a sadist who would take happiness in proving somebody wrong, pushing someone down. He saw that Bali Maharaj has gone through that. I cheated him of his entire possessions. His wife came and chastised him in front of everyone. He was bound up by the ropes of Varuna. All of that he meekly submitted to just because he wants to become my devotee. And we find in the Chaitanya Charitamrita where Lord Chaitanya repeatedly says, oh, if someone says this, he'll be purchased by me. So it doesn't mean that because Vamandev is his security guard, so Bali Maharaj also treats him like a security guard. No. But it is Vamandev's wish. Krishna is acting like a charioteer of Arjun. So His Holiness Radha Govind Maharaj repeatedly tells in his classes that how does a warrior, the hero, how does he tell his charioteer where to go, how to stop? He says he strikes his body with his foot. Now imagine, even if I was just thinking one day that even if I am God, I won't be doing something like that. I mean, somebody is my glorious devotee, I'll give him a few $1 million or whatever. But I'll drive his limousine, his Rolls Royce or his Mercedes for him. But if he kicks me with his leg, I won't tolerate that. Krishna is not only massaging Arjuna's limbs or is taking care of Arjuna's warriors. In one description, Krishna comes down and he is massaging the foot of, like a horse has 4 legs. So each and every leg is massaged by Krishna. So this is the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That all you people think that I just came as a conqueror, I came as a cheater. No, this is how I reciprocate. That's why these 3 points they came that, oh, his wealth is gone. He says, no, look what I've given. Oh, what about, you have pushed him into Sutala, but actually he wanted to become Indra. Krishna said, I have not forgotten that. Next Manandra, I will make him Indra, just in case. Just in case one of us feels that, like Dhruva Maharaj's story, oh, you're supposed to be undergoing a lot of torture, and then Krishna comes in front of you and he says, what do you want? I want a mill. No, I'm just happy seeing you. Most won't do that. Most would say, I want a lot of money. But hey, if bhakti is something that you come before Krishna and then you're not supposed to ask for money, I don't want it then. So Krishna told Dhruva, please take it. So no, I don't want it. Please take it. So no, my lord, I'm surely not interested. Arey Baba, please take it. Otherwise others will misunderstand. They may think that I am actually a miser or I am deficient. I can't give what I promise. So the third thing is that whether any trouble from his old enemies. And Krishna says, no, now you'll be under my shelter. So this is the real reason why these episodes are like this is done by Krishna. Like I think Athena has this question that what was Bali Maharaj's glory? The Bali Maharaj's glory is that he passed the test. So now you and me have hope. We don't have certainly all the 2 worlds or 3 worlds, whatever, but whatever tiny studio flat or whatever we have, if we have this feeling that this belongs to Krishna, well, that's a big progress.